But first tonight, I want to tell you about one of the dodgiest rorts in Canberra. This is one of the worst ways that politicians abuse taxpayer funding for their own pockets. We all know that politicians travel a lot. Many ministers and shadow ministers spend half of the year away from their hometown, away from their families, travelling interstate. And they work hard, there's no question about that. Well, maybe for some of them. For every night a politician is away, they're able to claim $291 from the taxpayer. This is meant to cover their accommodation for the night and some other minor expenses. But there are two ways that many politicians and their staff as well are abusing this taxpayer benefit. And this is all legal, mind you, all within the law. Firstly, some politicians stay in a much cheaper hotel, or they're able to get a cheap rate for a fancy hotel, but instead of the taxpayer getting the saving from the $291 a night, the MP pockets the entire amount. I know of politicians who choose to stay in an $80 a night budget motel room, and then they make money from the rest of the $291 a night that they can claim legally from the taxpayer. This can add up to tens of thousands of dollars over a parliamentary career. But there's a second way that politicians, lawfully, are pocketing more taxpayer funds than they should be. Many MPs own a home in Canberra, a second home. For those who've been politicians their entire career, they might have bought an investment unit a decade or more ago when property was cheaper in the nation's capital. They might have even paid off their mortgage, and good on them. But even though these politicians have their own place to stay in Canberra, they still claim and pocket the $291 a night. Anthony Albanese is one of these politicians. News.com.au's Samantha Maiden reports that Albanese charged taxpayers $17,000 in travel allowance to stay in his own Canberra flat last year. Maiden reports that Albanese has no mortgage on his Canberra apartment, and he stayed there for 59 nights during Sydney's marathon lockdown. Maiden writes, MPs can choose to stay in a hotel or use the generous $291 a night travel allowance payment to pay off their mortgages, bump up their salary, and spend as they see fit. She writes it's a long-standing tradition of veteran MPs to claim travel allowance to stay in apartments they own in Canberra, and it's completely legal under the current rules. Now, by basing himself in Canberra, not only did Albanese skip the brutal lockdown that Sydney was enduring for most of that time, but he made money from it as well. And it also had a political benefit. He was then able to fly to Queensland and Tasmania to campaign. And meanwhile, the Prime Minister, Scott Morrison, was mostly locked down in Sydney, unable to travel, unable to campaign. In total, Albanese claimed a travel allowance for 74 nights, even though Parliament was only sitting for 19 days during that period. And Albanese isn't the only one. The News.com reports that Victorian Liberal MP Tim Wilson claimed $37,000 to stay in an apartment he also owns in Canberra. And he also skipped Melbourne's harsh lockdowns. And there would be many, many more MPs as well. Not to mention dozens or hundreds of staff members working for both sides of politics also claiming this legal taxpayer benefit. Perhaps it won't come as a terrible shock to you to hear that Anthony Albanese was not asked about any of this when he appeared on the ABC Today. I put questions to his office today as well about whether he was going to repay the funding to offer him a right of reply, and received no response. In my opinion, lawful or not, this scheme is a disgraceful waste of taxpayer money. Albanese and others who have pocketed taxpayer funds while owning their own home, especially mortgage-free, they should return the funding. Albanese should return the $17,000 for the past year and any money he received in previous years as well. Taxpayers should absolutely not be giving politicians money for accommodation when they already have accommodation. And we shouldn't be helping to pay off the mortgage of other MPs. It's time that the Morrison government and the Parliament changes these rules and the abuse ends once and for all.